Yo, what's going on everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to go over my top Week 12 buy lows and sell highs for the 2021 fantasy football season. We are winding down the season here. It's getting pretty late. Some of your trade deadlines might have already passed. If not, I'm sure that deadline is coming up soon. So this is probably going to be our final buy low, sell high video, at least in terms of redraft. For the rest of the 2021 fantasy football season. I have two buy low candidates to talk about and then three sell highs. So we're going to start with the buy lows. The first one being David Montgomery, running back of the Chicago Bears. And David Montgomery just last season was a league winner. You can see how he ended the year last season. It was absolutely insane after that bye week. He had such a good schedule to end the season. And you can see by his point totals and half PPR, he definitely won people some leagues. And I could see a similar thing happening this year. He had an easy end of the season schedule last year, and you saw what he did. It was insane. This year, he also ends the season with an easy schedule. He has some really nice matchups to end the year once again. And I like him as a buy low because he really hasn't had a big blow-up game since returning from injury. So his fantasy manager might be willing to sell him for way less than what his value is. You can see he started the year pretty solid. He showed that he was a good player. He got injured. He came back against Pittsburgh. He looked good in the game, just didn't have a crazy high point total, didn't get in the end zone. Then they had a bye week. Then against Baltimore, once again, 14 for 58 on the ground. That's pretty solid. Just no touchdowns, not like an amazing rushing total. Didn't see a ton of volume in that game. But again, he has the ability to have those big games. And in some of these matchups, I think he could really win you some weeks and maybe win you a championship. Especially, I mean, starting today, I'm recording this on Thanksgiving. He gets the Detroit Lions. I think after this game, his buy low window will completely shut. In the playoffs, he gets Minnesota, Seattle, and the New York Giants. So if you can get this guy on the cheap, I would definitely do it. He is a great player with a great schedule. Go get him. Our next and final buy low candidate is another running back, and that's going to be Myles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. Similar to David Montgomery, he is a talented player who has missed some time, hasn't had a big game since returning from injury, and has a nice schedule to end the season. So when a guy has missed some games coming or with an injury and then he comes off that injury and he hasn't really done much, kind of like David Montgomery, I could see the fantasy manager of that player being a little frustrated and being willing to sell that player on the cheap. So if you can get Myles Sanders on the cheap, I would recommend doing it. While he is in a committee and he did have some ball security issues last week, he does have big playability and he should see some steady volume on a team that has committed to the run quite a bit lately. I made him a buy low last week, actually, in the Week 11 buy low sell high video. But I did warn you about the tough matchup against the New Orleans Saints, his first game coming back from injury. But that has only potentially lowered his price tag even more for the final stretch of the season. So I warned you guys, coming back, the Saints is a brutal matchup. I said maybe he comes back from injury, doesn't have an amazing game for fantasy, and honestly 16 for 94 on the ground, that was good to see. That was his highest carry total of the entire season. He saw one target, didn't catch it, which was a little bit worrying, and like I said, he had some ball security issue. He did fumble and he lost that fumble, and then I believe there was some other play where he almost fumbled the ball, like got called back, or he fumbled it and got it back. I didn't really see what happened, but long story short, he had some ball security issues. But with the schedule, with his big playability, with the Eagles' commitment to the run, as long as Myles Sanders can stay out of the coach's doghouse with losing the football, he should be really, really solid to close out the season. So if you can get him as your running back 2, I think that is really, really solid. He's pretty good at that position. But if you can get him as your flex, to me that is amazing because I think he will be solid. And I'm expecting at least 1 or 2 big plays to end the season so that he does have some big play upside in some of these games. Now we're going to move on to my sell highs. The first one is going to be Myles Gaskin, running back of the Miami Dolphins. He has had and will continue to have some nice games, but this is just a matter of consistency. You can see pretty much all the odd weeks of the season, he's had a good game, and then the even weeks, not a good game. I'm not sure why that's a trend, but it has really just been a thing. And he's just been really inconsistent. So coming off of a good game for fantasy, I would love to trade him away for someone who is a little bit more predictable week to week. It's also important to note he did play the Jets, who are one of the easiest matchups for running backs in all of fantasy. So again, he will have some good games to end the season, but this is a sell high. So if you can get more value than what he's worth, then I would make that trade. He's a nice little player to maybe you're getting rid of 2 players, so you're getting rid of Myles Gaskin and maybe some other wide receiver on your team to get a better player at wide receiver or running back, someone that's a little bit more solidified in their role. Then I think Myles Gaskin is the perfect sell high candidate for those types of trades. Our next sell high is another running back, and that is Damien Harris of the New England Patriots. He has been solid for fantasy. You can see from his point totals, he has had some nice games. And I do think he will likely continue to be solid in some games moving forward, but I just think that his peak production is behind him at this point of the season, thus making him a sell high. Remember, so I'm not saying sell him for nothing. I'm saying if you can get really good value for him based on what he has already done this season, I would love to do that. His best games were as the clear lead running back, at least when it comes to rushing attempts, because kind of in some of his best games, he was the clear lead runner. There were some other running backs more involved in the passing game, but on the ground, he was the guy. You know what I'm saying? And these were also in good matchups. So you see against Houston, he had a solid game. Then against Dallas, I didn't really love him that week just because I thought maybe Dallas would be leading that game, but the Patriots have turned out to be a little bit better than we thought they would be, and he was able to get some good volume against Dallas. And then against the Jets, that's a very easy matchup for running backs. Against the Chargers, that's a good matchup. And those were his best games of the season for the most part. And now, moving forward, it does look like Ramondre Stevenson, another running back for the Patriots, is going to be a part of this committee. Damien Harris, he just doesn't get a lot of work in the passing game either, and he does have some tough matchups on the schedule moving forward. So those are the reasons why I think he is a nice little sell high. You look at his schedule. He gets Tennessee. I don't know what to make of that team. Their defense was horrible to start the year. Then they looked okay. And now they look maybe like things are going bad against Houston. They got blown out. So I don't know what's going on with them. Buffalo, they get twice. And even though Jonathan Taylor just destroyed them, Damien Harris is no Jonathan Taylor. And other than JT, the Buffalo Bills have pretty much been a shutdown defense to running backs. He has a bye week as well. And he gets the Colts, which is another brutal matchup. And even the Jacksonville Jaguars have been pretty solid on defense as of late. So I could just see a lot of bust games for him moving forward. He could be solid if he gets some touchdown opportunities on the goal line particularly. So he always does have that baked into his value. But like I said, I do think he will have some bust games just based on those matchups, his lack of receiving work, and the potential to lose some work for Ramondre Stevenson. So I actually did just get rid of Damien Harris plus Sterling Shepard. And in return, I did get Miles Sanders. To me, I like that trade. Maybe for you, that's not your thing, but I wanted to kind of cash in on what Damien Harris has done and receive in return what I think Miles Sanders is going to do down the road. So that's an example of a trade I did make. But yeah, just in general, Damien Harris is a sell high for me. And our final player on the sell high list is going to be Mike Williams, wide receiver of the LA Chargers. And listen, I wanted it to be real too. He had an amazing start to the season. 4 of his first 5 games were absolutely phenomenal. He was one of the best receivers in all of fantasy to start the season. I have long been a Mike Williams believer, and I thought it was finally happening. But for whatever reason, since week 5, he's been very, very disappointing for fantasy. He did end up with a nice fantasy game in week 11 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but that was in large part due to a late 53-yard touchdown. And it was a weird play. There was some sort of miscommunication on the defense, or it was a broken play of some sort. He was just wide open. No one was covering him. And he has the speed and athleticism at that point to take it to the house. He is a talented player, don't get me wrong. And I could definitely see him having some more big plays moving forward. So don't get me wrong, that is part of his value. But before that play, he was doing not really anything, right? So other than that, he really had pretty much another bad game. And he does always have that big play ability, but I would cash in off of this big game if possible. The beginning of the season is also important to note. It can often weigh heavily on how fantasy managers perceive a player's value, right? So if someone in your league hasn't really noticed how inconsistent Mike Williams has been, how disappointing he's been since his hot start, and if they haven't noticed that his most recent big game was on one kind of weird play, and if without that play he would have had yet another bad game, I would make an offer for someone with a little bit more consistency. And like I said, when a player starts the season hot, for whatever reason, that just stands out in people's minds. I can't really explain it, but people really just remember that first week, like who had the big game, you know what I'm saying? That was the case with Sammy Watkins. I think it was either last year or the year before. He came out, he had that huge week 1, and then people kept putting him in their lineups. He was traded. People that sold high on him, though, they really got a lot of value out of that, because after that one game, Sammy Watkins didn't really do anything. This was when he was on the Chiefs. But for whatever reason, just because it was week 1 early in the season, that stuck in people's minds, and his value was perceived way higher than it was for quite some time. So yeah, if you can sell high on Mike Williams and get some really, really good value in return, I would definitely try to do that. And that's going to do it for our buy low, sell high video for week 12 of the 2021 fantasy football season. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to drop a like if you did in fact enjoy the video or find it helpful. Subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content, and good luck in week 12 and the rest of the season.